Greetings, my name is Will Gaucher, and I'm an Army veteran. And on behalf of the Paramount Veterans Network, we bring you another powerful virtual coffee with vets. Today, we welcome small business owner Deshawn Russell, who is the founder and CEO of Southern Elegance Candle Company. She is a military spouse and an inspiring leader. Today's session will be moderated by Paramount Veterans Network's Kawanda Smith, a Navy veteran and human resource data management expert. Today's conversation will cover Black History Month, entrepreneurship, resiliency, and leadership. Thank you for joining us, and please welcome Deshawn and Kawanda.
Thank you, Will, for that introduction. And thank you, Deshawn. We are so excited to talk to you about your entrepreneurial journey. As we celebrate Black History Month, of what accomplishments are you most proud?
Wow, thank you so much for having me. I think really being honest, just being in business as a first generation entrepreneur and being able to figure out how to remain in business. I think my great grandparents had to kind of get it out the mud, as the kids like to say. My great grandparents really had to figure out how to make their own money, but they encouraged my grandmother, my parents to go to college. And so entrepreneurship in the Black community was celebrated at one point in time. And then it was kind of like, oh, get that good government job with the retirement and the benefits. And so I didn't have a lot of people in my family that had been generationally entrepreneurs. So I am one of the first in my generation to actually have a successful multi-million-dollar, nationally recognized type of business. So just every day waking up, coming in here, seeing employees, realizing that my products are being sold all over the United States, like every day just feels like a win to me.
It's awesome. And I'm sure they are proud of you, as everyone else around you. You attended Fayetteville State University. How important are HBCUs in this day and age, and how has attending one impacted you?
Oh, wow. So my grandmother attended Fayetteville State. My parents attended Fayetteville State. I attended Fayetteville State, and then my nephew attended Fayetteville State. So to say that HBCUs has been very influential in my family, at a level of security for Black students and a level of, I'm going, so I started my college career at UNCG and transferred to Fayetteville State. And the moment I arrived on campus and I saw so many people that looked like me, that were not impressed with my intelligence, that never told me I was smart, it was just understood that Black people are smart. It was a completely different environment, and I felt at home. Like I felt like I could exist every day exactly how I am. And that's what HBCUs do for our younger generation. It gives them an enclave to show up in their full Blackness. And so there is a place for that, because often in the real world, we are taught, especially as Black women, to play small. And so HBCUs gives us a place where we can really start to play big, and then take that bigness and that confidence that comes with our extra sometimes out into the real world. So I think that there will always be a place for HBCUs.
Thank you for that. And I can attest to everything that you're saying from experience, because I went to Tennessee State University, Nashville. So it is a very big, proud moment of experience, expression, as you go into adulthood. So I totally agree with you on that. Now, you started your career as a teacher and now business owner. What were your initial thoughts when you left your teaching career of 26 years to step out on faith and start your entrepreneurial journey?
So I did what my mama told me to do. She said, be a teacher and marry a soldier, because that's what she did, and it afforded her a very comfortable life. And so I did it. but I always felt like, well, first off, let me tell you, my last teaching check was $2,467. Okay. And this was in like 2016. I was making basically $3,000 a month after taxes. And I looked at that check and I was like, I am tired of being poor. Now I know poor is relative, but I was looking at that little teacher check and I was like, this cannot be it. And I got some more years to go before I can retire. And so at some point in time, I just said, I can make this in a weekend. So if I just make this in a weekend selling candles, I'll be fine. I talked it over with my husband at the time, and he was like, yeah, if this is what you want to do, I'm going to support you. And so it was really about the economics of it all. And I just got tired of waiting to be chosen. I got tired of waiting to be promoted, waiting to be acknowledged, playing the political game that came along with being a teacher or a principal or an assistant principal or an assistant superintendent or a superintendent. It's always, as a Black woman, you always feel like you're waiting on someone to acknowledge your brilliance. And Gary Vee, I was watching him one day and he said, the market will determine your worth. And he was talking about entrepreneurs. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to just go out with my product and see what my worth actually is. See if how I view myself is in alignment with, how I really am. And so I felt like I'm just going to bet on Black and take my chances. And I can always go back to teaching. Like that career is not going anywhere. And so the first couple of years, it was like, oh, this is nice and fun. And then at one point it just exploded. And I was like, oh my God, I have a real nationally recognized brand. And it was just, I remember the year that we did, $1 million in sales. And I was just like, I have a real company. Like I have what I thought, I am who I thought I was. And that was a moment that, I still remember that moment that I really recognized that I did the right thing and bet on myself.
That sounds like not only a great moment, but a little emotional, trying to get to that point and then realizing like this is really me. Everything I envisioned, I am, and I made it happen. So I wanted to hear a little more about your company. Tell us a little more about your company.
So me and my husband were stationed in Germany, and I'm from the South. I was born in Dothan, Alabama. I was raised in Roseboro, North Carolina, like little southern towns. And so all of a sudden I was living in Europe. And I was like, oh my God, like I love living in Europe, but I wanted to come home. And I just realized like there's something special about being Black and living in the South. I know that there's a lot of negative stereotypes surrounding being Black and living in the South, but it was like something really special for me. Growing up in the South is like something really, really, really special. So I kept flying home. And when I made the decision to actually start my company, I said, I'm going to create something that really resonates with me. My great grandmother built churches under trees throughout the South during a time when Black women couldn't even be, preachers couldn't even own anything in their own name. And I said, if she can build a church, I should be able to build a company. And that was really my attitude towards everything. And so I just built a company literally around the things that I felt like made me special, my family special, and living in the South special. So I named it Southern Elegance. All of our candles are based off of Southern agriculture, and they all have a Southern name. So we named it after famous cities or culturally Southern, like hospitality, back roads. So all of them just have a Southern theme because I wanted a company and a product that I could speak authentically about and something that I loved.
That is good stuff. So talking about that, bringing that all to your company, your experiences, the South, and being in Brightleaf, North Carolina, picking homegrown blueberries on the family farm, smelling the salt of the ocean, were those early indicators for your love of scent?
I think that when you are a child and you're just kind of running around barefoot, enjoying the time with your grandparents and your great grandparents, like I think I grew up during a time where we didn't have social media. So
Mhm.
really what you had was your immediate environment, and that is all you really knew. And when you're in a small country town, like you really don't know what you don't know. You don't realize that there's so much in the world when, because we didn't have social media. And so I think that those experiences really shape an entire generation, not just me, an entire generation of people. And so at the time, I never really thought that it was anything special because everyone around me were experiencing the same type of childhood and the same type of upbringing. So it just becomes like how you are. It wasn't until I actually graduated college, got my first job, moved out of the country, that I was able to reflect back and say, even though like literally barefoot, poor, growing up in the country on a dirt road, like I have used an outhouse, like all of the things that, people associate with being poor. I look back on that time and say, wow, I had time with both my great grandmothers, my great grandfathers. I spent summers with my grandparents, both in Alabama and North Carolina. And I realize now, like, what a complete treasure that was. So even though, when you just don't realize how important family is and those types of relationships are when you are in it. And so I really didn't know until I started my company. And then I started talking about all these childhood memories. And everybody, it didn't matter if they were Black, white, young, or old, everybody could kind of relate to that same type of upbringing because we were just brought up in a very unique and special time.
Right. That just sounds like a lot of uniqueness, nostalgia, also bringing in the like everything from your ancestors, reconnecting all of your roots into from the sense of the South. Also, as a business owner, those are seemingly two different ways to reintroduce yourself after being a military spouse away from everything. So tell me a little bit about how that journey was for you, reconnecting all of that.
I think, well, the thing is, like, I'm still connected to all of that. I'm still very close to my uncles. I'm very close to my aunts, my cousins, my sisters, my mom. I talk to them almost daily. And so for me, it's really just a way of life. And so anything that happens with the company, literally is what happens in my daily kind of life. I still live in a small town. I live in a town with 4,000 people. So there are apartment complexes in large cities that have more people than live in this entire town where I work. We were just featured on Good Morning America, and I have to call the post office and be like, hey, we're sending more packages today than you will normally see in a month, and we're
Oh,
going to do
wow.
it for the next week. So for me, when I talk about the company or when I talk about my life, it literally is one and the same. There is no disconnect between the two things. My company and my life really is my real life. And I know sometimes we get caught up in marketing and we wonder, especially with AI, how much of this
Hmm.
is true, how much of this is just her selling us a story. But if you ever look at the stories that I put about, on my social media, you will see that the company and my life, really, the company is exactly how I live my life.
So it's basically they're running parallel, bringing that together. And that's a kind of unique way that you've done that with your business. As a military spouse, what advice would you give to other military spouses who have a business idea or entrepreneurial mindset?
So for me, first off, I encourage all women, just all women, to have a side hustle. Just to have a
Mhm.
way that you make additional money. I don't care what it is. It does not have to be product based. It could be service based. It could be babysitting, crocheting. Like, I do not care. I believe all women need financial security. That is what I believe. And so when you are a military spouse and you're traveling all over the world, it's incredibly difficult to, number one, maintain a job. And number two, be an entrepreneur because you are constantly traveling. So if you are product-based like I am, I had to wait until my husband retired before I could actually start my business. And so I just tell them, hold on to it, you know. And to be perfectly frank, I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I literally thought that I was going to be the superintendent of some school system somewhere. I was working on my doctorate in education, in ed leadership, when I started this company. And so the main thing that I tell anyone is that number one, if you're a woman, have another way to make some money because you just never know. But number two, never hold on to something so tightly that you can't get something even bigger. You know, I tell people all the time, you know, I was holding on so tightly to the rope of education, I didn't realize that it was like about to rip my hand off until I let it go and I was freed to do something way bigger than I even imagined. So I tell, just hold on to it, but also whatever your dream is, hold on to that, but also open yourself up because you just never know what bigger adventure exists for you.
Yes, because I know you talked about following the path with your mom that your mom set out for you, and now you've expanded on that. And definitely the highlight of multiple streams of income. That is so important, especially like you mentioned for women. So what do you find that is most helpful with growing your business and maintaining the community and support you've created around other women and minority business owners?
I think we need two things as minority business owners. Number one, you have to have familiar support. Like the people around you, my sisters really have rallied around me. I remember one time I was in Atlanta doing the one of the biggest trade shows in America, and I got the flu while I was in Atlanta. My sister and her husband flew to Atlanta and finished out that trade show for me, because trade shows are incredibly expensive. And she probably sold more than I could have ever sold. And so she did an amazing job for me. So familial support is incredibly important. And then the second thing that you need is community support. And that community, thanks to modern technology, maybe digitally, or it may be locally. It could come in any number of forms. It could come in just a support group. But for me, I just know that as a first really generation entrepreneur on this level, the online communities that I have with Bunker Labs, with the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, my local community here, the military community, like without them, the days when it gets like incredibly, incredibly difficult, those are the organizations that I always turn to give me the support that I need. And as a result, I have a coaching community to help other women-owned businesses so that they can really see. I pull the curtain and say, hey, this is what it is. And I encourage women in particular to create the lives that they want, you know, not the one that's created on social media, but the ones that when you turn off the computer and you turn off your phone and you look at the people around you, that you are creating a business that supports the type of life that you actually want, you know. And so, but the familial support and whatever kind of community that you can build, support is just invaluable.
Thank you for that, because I do really, really want to highlight it's kind of the stuff that's not in, school, in the business books that you may read necessarily that are telling you your community, your tribe, your family. And something else you really mentioned that's important is finding those company resources. You don't have to go it alone, and they can help aid you in establishing and directing your path. So that's really some good stuff. So this question I'm sure you get all the time. What is your favorite part of being a business owner? And how have you created a work-life balance as the owner?
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. My favorite part is being a role model. Like
Oh,
ever
good.
since I was a kid, like I knew I wanted to be in education and I wanted to change people's lives. And so I was a teacher, I was a math teacher of all things, and I would find kids, especially Black and brown kids, and I'd be like, come on, you're gonna be in my math class. And they would be looking at me like, I don't want to do this. This is hard. But by the end of the year, they were like, oh my God, thank you so much. You like literally changed the trajectory of their life because certain tracks, when you get on certain tracks, you're stuck in education. And so
Mhm.
I would pull kids out of the low track and be like, baby, you smart. I'm about to help you, you know, be smart, basically.
Mhm.
And so when I became an entrepreneur, I was kind of chugging away. And I would get messages from women and they would be like, oh my God, you're my role model. You are how I want to be. And I was just kind of looking around like, who are they talking? Are they talking about me? And so now just knowing that there are so many women that use my story as motivation, not necessarily to grow up to a company this size, but to create a company that serves them in their lifestyle,
Mhm.
So now for me, just knowing that the younger generation sees the people of my generation, because I'm in my 50s, as role models of what they can do. And sometimes I look back at them and I'm amazed at all of the resources that they have and what they are achieving at such a young age. And some of them are my role model as well. But just knowing that I can impact people's lives is just so incredible. And there is no work-life balance. There is none. I don't think
Okay.
I don't think that I just often wonder, where did we get a notion that in life there is balance some kind of way? There is something that is out of whack in our
Mhm.
lives at any given time. It might be
Right.
our children, it might be our job, it might be our health, it might be our parents. There is never a time in life where everything is going to be 50-50 or 10,
Mhm.
10, 10, 10, 10, or 25, 25, 25, 25. Like there is never a time when it is like that. So there is no balance. What I do is I wake up every day and I do what I need to do for that day, the end. Sometimes I have to do what is needed for my company. Sometimes it is for my partner. Sometimes it is for my kid. Sometimes it is for myself. But I just wake up every single day and do what needs to be done in that moment. And that's it. Like that is the only balance that really exists in our lives. And as long as you're waking up doing what you feel needs to be done, you will have the contentment and happiness that you need.
So, Deshaun, when you're thinking about entrepreneurship, because you kind of laid down some really, some really real things to consider. If it's a hobby or if it's something I want to go long haul for a sacrifice, how do you make that distinction? What was it for you that let you know this is something I really want to do full time?
The one thing that I tell everyone is that one is fun, but do you want to do that thing 1,000 times or 10,000 times or 100,000 times? And I think that when times are great and everybody's getting a stimulus check and has plenty of money to spend, it's great being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. But what happens when you go into a recession? And so
Mhm.
when times are hard, those are the times that you're going to figure out, do I have a very expensive hobby? Or is this a real thing? And one of the ways that, I really encourage people is your side hustle making 3 times your current salary? If your side hustle is not making 3 times your current salary, then you have a very expensive hobby. It's really nice to have additional income. When I was a teacher and I was selling on the weekends, it was great. But then when I made my candle business, my real business, and I no longer had health insurance, I no longer had the consistency of a check, then that's when is this a viable business or was this really just a hobby? And so I think people have to be very careful when they are making the leap from this is fun, I think I'm gonna do it full time, to this is how I'm gonna pay all of my bills.
Thank you, Deshaun, for that. I think that is an extremely important jewel because sometimes you could be working so much for balance that you can't get a grasp on anything. And being allowed to give yourself some grace in those areas when you have to shift your priorities and letting yourself know that's okay. Because sometimes you can get distracted by guilt. So thank you for sharing that and imparting that to people. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Before we wrap, can you share any advice with our viewers that may be thinking about shifting careers or creating a business?
I'm gonna be honest and tell my real advice. I tell people, don't quit your day job until your side
Okay.
makes 3 times your salary. And I know
Okay.
that that is not the advice that a lot of people give, because they be like, oh, these entrepreneurial streets are paved in gold. They are eventually, but trust and believe you're gonna be walking on a whole bunch of tacks, and it's gonna be fool's gold and copper and everything else before you get to a successful level. It takes 10 years to be an overnight sensation. And I think that the internet has fooled people into thinking that this thing is easy. So before you quit your day job, you got to have a lot of grit. You got to have a clear vision. You got to know exactly who you are. You got to know exactly where you are going. You need to know that there are going to be a lot of sleepless nights. Relationships are going to fall by the wayside. Friendships are going to fall by the wayside. There are a lot of sacrifices that you're going to have to make. But if you are willing to do all of that, the reward at the end is greater than anything that you can imagine. But I try to be clear with people, like, this is not easy. It is one of the most difficult things that you will ever do. There's a 90% failure rate in entrepreneurship for a reason. You could very well be in the top 10 or the top 1%. But just know it is going to be an incredible amount of work to get there, but it is worth it in the end.
Thank you. Thank you for that transparency, because people needed to hear that. Make sure you're fueling your dream before you walk away from all of your survival resources. Thank you, Deshawn, for your time today.
Thank you so much.